Hello friends. This is Fiction Quest. How are you all? So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto eat devil fruit and learn their new powers with the greatest pirate crew of the Grand Line? But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video with your friends. Now without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. A young Naruto sat in the Hokage's office looking out the window as rain fell down upon the window. The Hokage himself was sitting at his desk facing off against his most hated and annoying enemy, paperwork. Naruto, are you absolutely sure you want to be Hokage? You have to deal with a lot of annoying paperwork, Sarutobi asked. Yeah, but still, no one looks down on the Hokage. No one gives the Hokage trouble. Naruto said with a smile. And no one calls the Hokage a demon, he added mentally. For as long as he could remember, whenever he went outside there would always be someone who would yell at him, call him a demon, and on a few occasions throw something at him. Hokage Tower was the only place that Naruto ever felt safe and loved. The old man had always looked after him, just like the Mega Perv and Granny, even if they weren't around as much. Lord Hokage, the Lords Uchiha and Higuya are here, the Hokage's secretary said, poking her head in. Thank you, Sarutobi said. Naruto, yeah, I'm heading out, old man, Naruto said with a smile, hopping down from his perch and heading to the door. Before he reached the door, it swung open and the two ninja nobles walked in. Naruto bowed politely, but neither of the ninjas paid him any mind. After Naruto left the room, he saw two young children. With a small smile, he walked forward towards the two of them. Hi, I'm Naruto. I'm Sasuke Uchiha, said the young boy with dark hair and eyes. And I'm Hinata Hyuga, said the young girl with lighter hair and white, pupilless eyes. All three of them smiled at one another. Well, looks like our little Naruto has made a few friends, said a voice. An old man with long, spiky white and a busty woman with short blonde hair walked in. Mega Perv. Granny, Naruto yelled, bounding at the two of them. Welcome back. It's good to be back, Squirt, Jiraiya said with a smirk. And who are your little friends? This is Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga, Naruto said, pointing to his two new friends. An Uchiha and a Hyuga, Tsunade said with a smile. Don't see those two in the same place very often. Our fathers have a meeting with the Hokage, Sasuke said while Hinata nodded shyly. I see, Tsunade said. Jiraiya meanwhile was dealing with a hyperactive blonde boy bouncing up and down chanting, What did you bring me? 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 Jiraiya smiled at the child. Sorry, I didn't bring you anything, Squirt, Jiraiya said. But I will give you a sneak peek at what I've brought the old man. Naruto smiled and nodded. Sasuke and Hinata looked over to see what Jiraiya had brought. The old sage reached into his bag and pulled out a scroll. Unsealing it, 3 fruits appeared before the children. Fruits? Sasuke asked with a raised eyebrow. These are special fruits, kid, Tsunade said. They're called devil fruits, fruits that had supposedly been enchanted by sea demons that come from a place called the Grand Line. I've heard of that place, Hinata said. It's said to be full of monsters. Among other things, Jiraiya said. I've actually got a friend who sails the Grand Line all the time. Really? Naruto said, his eyes wide. Really, Squirt, Jiraiya said, ruffling his hair with a grin. So, what can these fruits do? Sasuke asked, picking one up. Well, that one you're holding there is the bat fruit. Whoever eats it can go from human to bat to something in between. Jiraiya explained. That one is called the spiral fruit. I'm not completely sure, but I think that one allows the eater to produce drills around their body. These fruits taste yucky, Naruto said. He sounded like his mouth was full. Slowly, Jiraiya and Tsunade turned to see Naruto eating the final fruit. And that would be the LA fruit, Jiraiya said, slowly starting to laugh. It gives the eater the power to control the elements of earth, water, wind, fire, and lightning. These do taste pretty bad, Hinata agreed. Sasuke spat out the part he bit off of that fruit. Nasty, he muttered. Tsunade was staring at the 3 children while Jiraiya was full out laughing. The Hokage's door opened and Sarutobi walked out with Sasuke and Hinata's fathers. "Jiraiya, Tsunade, welcome back," he said, and then he looked over at Naruto. "Naruto!" he yelled as the boy fell over. The last thing he heard was and saw was everyone running towards them. Naruto snapped up. He wasn't in the Hokage's tower anymore. He was in some kind of sewer, but it looked like all hell was breaking loose inside it. The ground was shaking. Water was crashing around him. Winds were blowing like mad. Fires were roaring around him, and lightning crashed somewhere above him. "What in the world is going on in here?" Naruto demanded. "It's the fruit you ate, Kit," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere. Naruto looked behind him and his eyes widened when he saw a cage behind him. But what really made his eyes widen was that behind the cage is a giant red eye with a slit pupil. Who are you?" Naruto asked. "Kyuubi no Yoko at your service, Kit," the eye said in a smile. The nine-tailed fox?" Naruto asked. "I thought you were dead. Didn't the fourth kill you?" "No, just sealed here inside your body, although I have to say, being imprisoned inside the body of a child has helped to mellow me out in a way," the fox demon said. "Given the circumstances, however, I think we'll do a proper introduction later, preferably when you're not being torn apart from the inside out." "Torn apart from the inside out?" Naruto cried. "Yeah, like I said, that fruit you ate, the LALA fruit, it gave you the power to become and control the elements of earth, water, wind, fire, and lightning. However, it's not the kind of power that a single person can control," Kyuubi explained. "However, you've gotten lucky to the point that I'm here to help balance you out." "So, we're going to work together to control all this?" Naruto asked. "Exactly, I'll provide the chakra, but you're going to need to control it all," Kyuubi explained. "Just do what I say. First I want you to take control of all of this chaos around us. Imagine that you're spinning it all around you." Naruto took a deep breath and focused. Soon, all of the elements began to spin around him. Next, focus on separating it all into 5 spheres, one for each of the elements. Soon, all of the disasters around Naruto did as the fox instructed and 5 orbs appeared before Naruto, one green, another blue, and then red, followed by pink, and ending in yellow. "Now, take those powers into your arm and let the power wash over and control it." Naruto held out his arm and the spheres began to sink into his arm. Naruto let out a sigh and flexed his arm. "Is that all it takes?" Naruto asked. "Pretty much," Kyuubi replied. "We're in all this together, you know. If you go, I go." Little something the fourth thought up. "Well, time for you to wake up, Kit." Naruto's eyes opened to find everyone standing over, with the exceptions of Lords Uchiha and Hyuga, with looks of concern on their face. "You all right, Squirt?" Jiraiya asked. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" Naruto asked. "Well," Sasuke said. "You're kind of split up," Tsunade said. Naruto raised an eyebrow and Sarutobi held up a mirror for Naruto. His eyes widened as he saw that his face had been split in half, one side lightning and the other side fire. Looking down at his body, he saw that part of his torso and his left arm were also fire while the rest of his upper body seemed similar to wind. Looking down, he saw that his left leg was made of water and his right leg was earth. "Great, people always called me a demon. Now I freaking look like one," he thought. Looking up at the people around him, he raised an eyebrow. "So, why is everyone not running away in fear of the new LALA me?" Naruto asked. "Come on, Squirt, just because you look a little different doesn't mean you're still not you," Jiraiya said. "And we wanted to make sure that you were all right," Sasuke said. Hinata nodded. Naruto grunted and looked between his 2 new friends. "So, how are you 2 handling your powers?" Naruto asked. "I've actually got a pretty good handle on them," Sasuke said, shifting into a half-bat form, with wings sprouting from his back, his nose flattening out, growing claws on his hands and his feet, his ears lengthened and grew pointed, and small fangs poked out from his mouth. "Wow, Sasuke, you look better than you did before," Naruto said with a smirk. Sasuke gave a short bark of a laugh and flapped up, hovering over Naruto. "Okay, I'll admit it, that's a nice trick," Naruto said. "So, how are you doing, Hinata?" The girl in question blushed and looked down. Well, I'm able to th this," she said. She pointed her finger and a second later, Her entire forearm was a large drill. Cool. Naruto said. He turned to look at Sarutobi. So, what am I going to do, old man? Sarutobi stroked his beard as he looked at the small boy. Then he turned to his two former students. Jiraiya, you said you had a friend in the Grand Line, correct? He asked. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, about half of his crew is made up of devil fruit eaters. Jiraiya said, and then a small smile crept across his face. You want to send him off to train with them, don't you? The old Hokage nodded. I think that it would be a good idea, he said. Hold on, Lord Uchiha shouted. My son has got powers like this brat. I demand that he is trained as well. As do I for my daughter, Lord Hyuga shouted. Sarutobi sighed and was about to say something when he was cut off. That sounds fair, Naruto said, surprising everyone. I mean, if we all have these powers, then we should all have some training in how to control our powers. And it would be nice to finally have a few real friends. As if having read his mind, Sarutobi knew why Naruto had said this, because he knew he needed some friends too. With a smile, Sarutobi nodded. However, I am going to be sending a couple of our own ninjas so that the kids do not fall back on their ninja training, he said. With a call, 2 Anbu soldiers appeared by the Hokage. Kamachi, Toa, I have a long-term mission for the two of you. The two of you are to watch over and help train these 3 children alongside the, he turned to Jiraiya. Straw Hat Pirates. Jiraiya finished for his old sensei. Yes, Lord Hokage. They said in unison. Their ship, the Thousand Sunny, should be in port at the Land of Waves in a few days. Jiraiya said. With any luck we should be able to catch them if we leave tomorrow at dawn. You mean I've got to go outside looking like this? Naruto yelled. Calm down, Naruto. Tsunade barked. Try to focus on what you normally look like. Yes, ma'am. Naruto said, more scared of her than of his own appearance in public. Taking a deep breath, Naruto began to focus. Slowly, his appearance began to shift back to normal. Before long, the spiky blonde hair and blue-eyed boy was standing there with a smile on his face. Thanks, Granny. No prob, kid. Tsunade said. Now you'd better head home and get packed. It's not like I've got much to pack. Naruto grumbled. While the lords showed no emotion at his statement, while their children on the other hand looked at each other and then to Naruto. They looked at each other, nodded and turned back to Naruto. If you need any cloths or anything, I'll help, Hinata said. Hinata. Lord Hyuga shouted. I'll pitch in some cash too if you need it. Sasuke added. Sasuke. Lord Uchiha growled. Neither of you have to worry, Sarutobi said. Should Naruto need anything, I will help him pay for it. Naruto smiled and nodded. Thanks, old man. Naruto said. Well, I guess I'll see you all tomorrow. Till tomorrow, element lad. Sasuke said. See you then, bad boy. Naruto said with a smile. I'll see you later too, Hinata. Hinata blushed a bit and nodded. Hey, don't worry about anything. No matter what happens, I'll help you. Hinata blushed and nodded, still not meeting his eyes. Hey, Naruto took her chin in his hand and made her look at him. We're going to get through this, I promise. We all will. Sasuke said, slinging his arms around both their shoulders. After all, we're all a bunch of freaks. And we freaks need to stick together. Hinata looked back and forth between the two boys and a small smile finally showed on her face. Yeah, she said softly. A few days later in the Land of Waves, Jiraiya led the small troop of 2 Anbu and 3 devil fruit-eating ninja in training to the docks. So where is this ship? Toa asked. Right here, Jiraiya said. As soon as everyone got sight of the ship, several jaws dropped. Amazing, Naruto said. The ship was huge and the masthead seemed to be a cross between the sun and a lion's head. Jiraiya smiled at the boy before he called up onto the ship. Ahoy there, Captain Luffy, he called up onto the ship. Jiraiya. A voice called and a man jumped down from the ship. He wore a red vest and blue jean shorts, sandals, a straw hat, and had a small scar under his eye. It's good to see you, Porcupine Head. You too, Straw Hat. Jiraiya said. Guys, I'd like to introduce you to Captain Monkey D, Straw Hat, Luffy, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates and the Thousand Sunny. Luffy, this is Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, Toa, and Kamachi. You see, The kids here ate some devil's fruit and the other two are going to help them with their ninja training. So why bring them to us? Said a large man with a metal nose, Hawaiian shirt, and bikini. Because Frankie, with about half of you crew having also eaten devil's fruit, I was hoping that maybe you could train them, Jiraiya explained. I'd trust them, Luffy called down a man with green hair and 3 earrings in his ear. I've worked with the Konoha ninjas before. They're about as trustworthy as you can get around here. Luffy nodded and looked over at Jiraiya. We'd be happy to bring the kids along with us, except we've got to make a trip to Alabasta here pretty soon for our friend's daughter's coronation, Luffy said. Alabasta? Kamachi exclaimed. That's in the Grand Line. Yep. Luffy said with a smile. Sounds like fun, Naruto said, matching the captain's grin. I think I'm going to like this kid, Luffy said, ruffling Naruto's head. Luffy, a voice called down from a head-haired girl, it's time to head out. Well, all aboard, Luffy said, stretching his arm out and shooting back up onto the deck. Okay. That's a cool trick, Sasuke said, shifting into his half-bat form. Shall we? He held his hands out to Naruto and Hinata. Toa and Kamachi jumped onto the ship as Sasuke flew down with Naruto and Hinata. All right then, Luffy said, looking around at his crew and his guests. The kids were fascinated by the more colorful people of the Straw Hat crew like Brook and Chopper. Let's set sail. The anchor was raised, the sails unfurled and the Thousand Sunnies set sail for their next adventures. Naruto stood on the Thousand Sunnies deck in his element mode, one hand over a large jar of dirt, the other over a bowl of water. He was trying to concentrate, to control the elements around him, but every time he tried, it was either not enough power, or it was too much, either way he wouldn't control it. Damn it. Naruto muttered. Maybe this will help, Chopper said, holding out a small rolled-up piece of paper. A doctor prescribing a cigarette to his patient, isn't that a little backwards? Naruto said with a grin. Except this isn't a cigarette, Chopper said. I call it a chakra stick. It's made up of stuff those Anbu brought with them to help them. It should help you balance out your powers. Thanks, Naruto said, putting the stick in his mouth and flicking this thumb, lighting it on fire. He took a pull on the stick before trying the power again. This time, the dirt and water flew up and started to mix with the air and the fire and lightning that were coming from Naruto's hands. Success, Chopper said with a smile. Chopper, I know you probably get this all the time, but Doc, you are a genius, Naruto said with a smile. Yeah, the man reindeer said with a smirk, I do get that a lot. Up, and Sasuke dropped down onto one leg as he was breathing hard. Kamachi and Toa stood over him, their swords in hand. Come on Sasuke, you said you wanted to learn how to use a sword, Toa said. How can you learn if you're down on your knees? How can you teach when your student is down on his knees? Zoro said, leaning against the deck railings. He walked forward and knelt down next to Sasuke. Listen kid, these guys are working you hard. You can understand that they're working hard, sure, but everyone has got their own way. Zoro stood up and drew one of his swords. Now let's see what you can really do. Sasuke stood up and picked up his sword and held it out to Zoro. Bring it. Sasuke challenged. He charged forward and Zoro locked blades with him. The two of them danced around for a moment before Zoro threw him back. Keep your movements smaller. I can tell what you're going to do before you do it, Zoro instructed. Sasuke growled before glancing behind him and getting an idea. He jumped back and shifted into his Batman form. Flapping his wings, he shot off of the ship's railing. Zoro had just enough time to draw a second sword to block Sasuke's attack. Sasuke flipped over him and shifted back into his human form with 2 swords in his hands. Zoro looked down and saw that his other sword had been taken. Not bad, Zoro admitted. He held his 2 swords in front of him, but was stunned when Sasuke threw his sword back to him. I can't explain it, Sasuke explained. But I could hear a voice coming from the sword. It said that it was a part of your soul and that no matter how hard I would try, it wouldn't work for me, especially against you. Zoro stared at the young swordsman in training and then gave him a smile. You've got a real gift kid, he said. Toa, Kamachi, you two just work on teaching Bad Boy here the basics of how to use a sword, leave the more advanced training to me. And with that, he placed his 3rd sword in his mouth and tied a black bandana onto his head. All right kid, come at me with everything you've got so that I know what to work with. Sasuke grinned and charged. N.O.P. Hinata stood on the deck, both her forearms turned into drills and looked around practice dummies that had been set up and charged at one of them, piercing all of them and then tearing them apart by spinning the drill. Next she activated her Byakugan and launched a series of drills from her back at the 3 dummies behind her. Most impressive, Toa said, stepping forward and clapping. Now there's something I want you to do. He threw his arm out and poured chakra into the mark on his arm, using it to create a drill of own. Come at me with the strongest drill you've got. Yes, Toa-sensei. Hinata said. She created a drill on her right arm and then threw it out away from her, extending it a good 6 feet before lifting it over her head where it widened to 3 feet at the base. Spiral breaker. She shouted, shooting it by pumping chakra from all points on her body. Toa pulled his own fist back and thrust it forward to meet Hinata's drill. The two were deadlocked for a minute before Towa's chakra drill began to crack and then eventually shatter under the power of Hinata's spiral breaker. He jumped back at the last possible second so that he wouldn't be torn apart by the drill's power. Most impressive, Hinata. I have nothing left to teach you, my student, Toa said with a bow. Thank you, Toa-sensei, Hinata said, returning the bow. N.O.P. Naruto stood over his elements, trying to meld them together but was having little luck. I should have known Chopper's chakra stick wouldn't be enough to really bring out everything I had, Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head. Perhaps you need something to help you focus, said a voice. Naruto turned around to see Brook walking towards him. Naruto shrugged. Here, try using this. He handed Naruto a guitar. Naruto strummed the guitar and all of a sudden, the elements around him rose up but faded as the note faded into silence. Perfect, Brook said with the best smile a skeleton could give. Can you teach me how to use this? Naruto asked, smiling. But of course, Brook said, but wait right here for a second. Brook walked into the ship for a second and came back with what looked like a giant 2-sided battle axe. One of the blades, the one that was curved upward, was shaped like a demon's wing, while the other one was a pure white and that of an angel. This is the Valkyrie. I'm pretty sure it is the only other thing besides me to survive the Rumbar pirates. Naruto took the weapon. Looking at it, he saw that there were 6 strings attached to it and the head of it looked like a classical skull and crossbones. It's beautiful, Naruto whispered before looking at Brook. I don't know if I can accept this. Strum it, then it will be decided whether or not you get to keep it, Brook said. You see, this guitar has a mind of its own. It chooses and decides who is worthy of wielding it. Naruto took a deep breath and ran his fingers across the strings of the guitar. The sound that came from it was absolutely beautiful. Congratulations, Naruto Uzumaki. You are now the rightful owner of the Valkyrie, Brook said. Now, let's get to practicing, shall we? N.O.P. Naruto was leaning against one of Nami's tangerine trees practicing with Valkyrie, the chakra stick smoking between his lips. You know, if you were to ever grow your hair over your face, you'd probably end up looking like Sanji, Nami said as she steered the ship. Is that a compliment or an insult? Naruto asked. He'd encountered the cook before and knew what he was like. A bit of both, I think, Nami said with a smirk. Naruto laughed as he kept playing, combining his powers of wind and water to create a small rain cloud over Nami's trees. So, when are we going to reach Alabasta? Naruto asked. Probably in a couple of days, Nami replied, glancing at the eternal poise. Naruto, Hinata said, walking up the steps to him and Nami. Since their arrival, she had been working, particularly with Komachi and Nico Robin, to help with her self-confidence. Her stutter was all but gone and she was wearing much reviling cloths. In most people's opinion, she seemed to be taking after Nami's sense of style. Can I speak to you, in private? She added, glancing at Nami. Sure, Naruto said, standing up and slipping Valkyrie onto his back. He followed Hinata into a private room for the two of them. After Hinata closed the door, she turned to him. Naruto, how do you see me? She asked. Well, I see you as my best friend and I guess my sister, Naruto said with a shrug, his arms crossed. Naruto, I see you as so much more than that, Hinata whispered. I see you as a gorgeous, amazing inspiration that fills me with so much. Naruto's jaw dropped and he rubbed the back of his head. Hinata, I'm sorry I don't return your feelings. He took Hinata's chin in his hands and raised her white eyes to his sparkling blues. But I can and will promise you this. No matter what happens, I will always be there for you. We're family and that's never going to change. He leaned forward and placed a small kiss on Hinata's forehead. Thank you, brother, Hinata said, wrapping her arms around him in a tight hug. Anytime sis, Naruto said, returning the hug. Anytime. N.O.P. Sasuke stood on the mast of the ship, a smile on his face as the wind blew through his lightening black hair. He was beginning to love life on the sea. His time amongst the pirates had been great for him. Zoro teaching him swordsmanship, Sanji was teaching him his kick, and Frankie was giving him tips about building things. What the young Uchiha loved most about it was that here, he wasn't Itachi's little brother. Here he was his own man and could forge out who he was without having to worry about his brother's shadow. Using the tree walking technique he'd learned, he started to walk down the mast and back to his cabin when he heard something. A faint crying. Curious, he walked over and stood next to the crying person and was surprised to find that it was Hinata. Hey, what's wrong? Sasuke asked, kneeling down next to the Hyuga girl. It's just, I made a fool out of myself in front of Naruto earlier, Hinata said through her tears. I told him that I loved him and that he only saw me as his little sister. Sasuke gave a small half smile and put his arm around the crying girl. He was surprised when she threw her arms around him and started to sob uncontrollable into his chest. Unsure of what to do, he just wrapped his arms around her and let her cry. When she finished, she looked up at him and smiled. Thanks, she said. For what? Sasuke asked, confused. For just being here, she said with a smile. No problem, Sasuke said with a smile. Hinata looked at him, and something about his new silvery hair and gold tan along with the way the moonlight hit him just made her blush a bit. Well, good night, she said, walking away, hoping he hadn't seen her red face. N.O.P. The Straw Hats +5 stood in the shadows of the Alabasta Palace while Queen Vivi and King Koza's daughter Cici was rightfully crowned the Princess of Alabasta. Naruto was stunned by how pretty the young girl seemed. She looked a lot like her mother but had inherited her father's hair color. She's kind of cute, Naruto muttered, half hoping no one was listening. Yeah, cute, Hinata whispered, except her eyes were fixed on the third member of their ninja in training trio. However, no one heard her. When the ceremony was over, the crew walked into the palace throne room to the sight of the smiling blue-haired queen. Luffy, she exclaimed, jumping off her throne and throwing her arms around the captain's neck. I'm so glad you made it. Like we were going to miss out on little Cici's coronation, Nami said, looking around. Where is the girl of honor? Probably hiding, she's not that used to strangers, Koza said. By the way, who are your new shipmates? They're more like our guests on the ship, Luffy explained. The kids ate some devil's fruits and were brought to us for training. I see, Vivi said. Well, it's very nice to meet you all. Thank you, Queen Vivi, Kamachi said with a bow. I am Kamachi, this is my partner Toa, and these are our students, Sasuke Uchiha, Hinata Hyuga and… Oh, where's Naruto? The rest of them looked around but there was no sign of the blonde ninja in training. Oh no, we've got to find him, Toa said. Is he a dangerous boy? Koza asked. Nothing serious, but he's a notorious prankster, Nico Robin said with a smile. Oh, all right then, Koza said, sitting back down on his throne. Things get so dull around here sometimes, having a prankster around might liven things up a bit. Kamachi and Toa stared at the king while Sasuke and Hinata giggled quietly to each other. The blonde in question was currently wandering around the castle. It reminded him a lot of the Hokage's tower, except, well, it was an entire castle and not just a tower. He was brought out of his musings when he heard something. It sounded familiar and then it hit him, it was the sound of someone training. Peeking in, Naruto saw that she was doing what appeared to be some dancing with some shining objects in their hands. Squinting, Naruto saw that they were knives. Naruto took another step into the room and then he heard a squeak. With a grimace he looked down at the loose floorboard. When he looked up again, he saw a dagger come flying at his head. Reacting on instinct, he whipped Valkyrie around and played a chord. A gust of wind blew out the knife back towards Cici, who ducked at just the right second. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, it was reflex, Naruto said, running towards her. Are you all right? Yeah, that was amazing. How'd you do that? Cici asked, looking up into Naruto's bright blue eyes while Naruto gazed into her own. Devil fruit power, Naruto said quietly. At the doorway, someone cleared their throat, snapping the two children out of their trance. Not interrupting anything, are we? Sasuke said with a smirk, Hinata giggling by his side. Need something, Sasuke? Naruto replied with a glare. Well, Zoro said I need to make my own sword. King Koza said something about a space rock that crashed into the place a few years back. Sasuke explained. I figured you with your Suchi powers could help. Yeah, I'll even help provide the fire and water for it if you need it, Naruto said. Wait a second. Cici screamed. The three ninja in training looked at her. If you're going outside, I want to go too. Sasuke scoffed. You're a princess. Shouldn't you be wearing a dress or something? He said. At that, Hinata slapped him upside the head. Need I remind you that back home you and I are like royalty, Sasuke? Hinata said. Which means I'm something of a princess too. Yeah, but you're a ninja, there's a difference. Sasuke countered. Naruto sighed. How long have you been practicing with those knives? He asked. About a year now, Cici said proudly. All right then, you're coming, Naruto said. Sasuke and Hinata stared at him as he took Cici by the hand and started to lead her out of the room. Maybe while we're making Sasuke's sword, you could talk to our sensei Kamachi into teaching you a few more skills. Really? Cici said with a smile. Yep, Naruto said, taking Cici's arm and leading her out. Sasuke and Hinata stopped and looked at each other. Any idea what just happened? Sasuke asked. Hinata shook her head. They both turned around to catch up with their two friends. Naruto walked around the desert. He was in his Suchi mode, his entire body was made of earth. He was practically gliding across the sand, his feet seemingly merged into it. We're getting close, I can feel it. Naruto said until finally, he found what he was looking for. It's right here. Hinata, Sasuke said. Hinata nodded and made her way to where Naruto had marked. Spiral tunnel. Her entire body from the head down turned into a drill as she dug down into the sand. Is she gonna be okay? Cici asked. Relax, Hinata may not look it, but she's as tough as it gets. Naruto said. I wouldn't call her my sister if she wasn't. I found something. Hinata called up. Then hang on. Naruto called back down, taking Valkyrie off his back. Naruto played a power chord on the guitar. A large black shot up out of the ground with Hinata standing on it. One space rock and pretty girl, he said with a smirk. This is great and all, but how are we going to get this thing back to the palace? Cici asked. The three ninja in training smiled at the girl before they each got on a side of the space rock and lifted it up. Cici's eyes bugged out and her jaw dropped. As the four of them made their way back to the castle, they soon were ambushed by a small group of bandits. Well, if it isn't the princess and three little, super strong kids. The apparent leader said before he caught sight of the three kids holding up a giant black space rock. Yeah, we're three little kids, acting as the princess's bodyguards, and if you want to try anything, we will beat you within a few inches of your life. Naruto said. Well, we've still got you beat in numbers. The leader said, glaring at the kids. Sasuke rolled his eyes and glanced at Naruto, who nodded. The three of them put down the meteorite and stepped in front of Cici. Naruto held Valkyrie in his hands while Sasuke drew the training sword he worked with. What do you think, Uchiha? Looser pays for ramen when we get back home. Naruto asked. You're on Uzumaki, Sasuke said with a smirk. I'll take some of that action. Hinata said, popping her knuckles. The bandits charged forward and then in almost a flash they were down on the ground. Weapons had been chopped apart, swords were shattered and several of them had broken bones. So, what have you got? Sasuke asked. I got 3 of them. Hinata said. I got 5, Sasuke said with a smirk. 9, Naruto said, returning Valkyrie to his back, and Sasuke's sword. He added as the blade snapped and fell to the ground. You broke my sword, Sasuke shouted, pointing the broken weapon at Naruto. Would you believe me if I said it was an accident? Naruto asked. The first thing I'm going to do when I make my new sword is kill you with it, Sasuke growled. We'll just have to wait and see how that works out. Naruto smirked. They turned back to see Cici standing there next to the space rock staring at the 3 ninja in training. Hey, is she okay? Hinata asked. Naruto walked forward and waved his hand in front of her face. He whistled and snapped his fingers in front of her face. Lights are on but nobody's home. Naruto sighed. Think you two can carry the rock while I carry her? Sasuke and Hinata glanced at each other and nodded. The two of them picked up the rock and carried it while Naruto carried the princess of Alabasta bridal style. When they reached the castle, Koza nearly blew the roof off the palace. Boy, what do you think you are doing with my daughter? He roared. In my complete and total defense, while I did ask her to come with us, we also defended her after we were ambushed by bandits. Naruto explained. After she saw us in action, she just kind of passed out. Koza continued to glare at him, but then Cici started to stir in the blonde boy's arms. Her eyes slowly opened and she looked up at Naruto before blushing deep crimson. Is there a reason I'm curled up in your arms, Naruto? She asked. Naruto couldn't help but grin. You passed out after you saw me, Sasuke and Hinata in action. Naruto said. We took care of those bandits and there you were wide-eyed and out of it. Oh. Cici said simply. Can you put me now? Naruto went a little red in the face himself before he set the girl on her feet. Well, now that that's all said and done, Sasuke said, ruining the moment a bit, you've got to help me make a sword out of this lump of space. He jerked his thumb behind him with a smirk. Naruto nodded and helped his friends pick up the meteor and carried it to the weapons forge. For the next few days, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata worked hard to try and create a new sword for Sasuke. As it turned out, the chunk of space rock was extremely hard to take apart to forge. It turned out that the only way to actually heat the thing was to combine his fire with his wind, and that only made the rock soft enough for Hinata to start drilling off pieces of it that Sasuke started to use his hammer on. While the three of them worked tirelessly on their creation, Cici was working hard with Komachi in bettering her knife fighting skills. Her mother and father were not entirely crazy about their daughter learning to fight, but then, they had to tell themselves, they too had to do some fighting in the days when they were the princess and the rebel leader. Once day, Cici went into the forge to tell the three ninja in training that lunch was ready, only to find them all passed out from working so hard. She looked over and saw a long black sword laying on an anvil not far from where they were asleep. Creeping over them, she reached out to touch the blade only to find her hand grabbed at the wrist. Looking up, she saw Naruto standing there with tired but alert eyes. I wouldn't touch that if I were you, princess, Naruto said, letting go of the girl's arm. It may not look it, but the blade is still very hot, and probably a little electrified. Electrified? Cici asked. In our line of work, getting hit by lightning is pretty likely, Naruto explained, so to best take care of ourselves, it's good to make sure we won't get shocked. He gave a smile which Cici replied. I just came down to let you know that lunch is ready, Cici said. Thanks, Naruto said, standing up and stretching. He glanced over at the still sleeping Sasuke and Hinata and shook them both awake. Come on guys, chow time. Right, Sasuke said, scratching the back of his head and helping Hinata to her feet. Together, the four of them walked upstairs for lunch and then finally made it to the main dining room to hear a chorus of surprise that nearly gave them all heart attacks. Who, what, where, how, why, when, Naruto spluttered, getting a laugh out of everyone. Naruto, don't you know what today is? Komachi asked, grinning at the boy. It had taken a couple of months, but the Straw Hats and ninjas had gotten both Toa and Komachi to remove their masks. Toa had something of a pointed face with green eyes that was half covered by long red hair. Komachi had the kind of face that could only be described by many of the older males of the crew as angelic, with bright blue eyes and wavy blonde hair. No, should I? Naruto asked, scratching his head. It's your birthday, genius, Toa said, giving the blonde's shoulder a good hard shake. As soon as those words left the ANBU's lips, a smile broke out across Naruto's face. Oh man. We've been at sea for so long that I'd completely lost track of the days, Naruto said excitedly. Yeah, the Grand Line'll do that to ya, Zoro said, nodding. Naruto, Cici said. Naruto looked over at Princess. She pulled a hat from behind her back. It was made of leather and had 3 points on it. Captain Luffy said that all great pirate captains wear hats, so I thought I'd be the one to give you yours, she said, blushing slightly. Thanks, Naruto said, taking the hat, but I'm not a pirate, much less a captain. I don't know about that, Sasuke said, slinging an arm around Naruto's shoulder. If the ninja thing doesn't work out, we could make great pirates, just as long as I'm the first mate. And what about me? Hinata demanded with her hands on her hips. How does navigator sound? Naruto asked, raising the hat and placing it on his head. Well, if I have to, Hinata said with a smile. Naruto returned it as he placed his new hat on his head. Here you go, Naruto. I made this with Nami and Robin, Hinata said, handing Naruto a jacket with what looked like flames around the ends of the sleeves and waves at the tail. A lightning storm was on the back along with what looked like a tornado and rocks. Aw, sweet, Naruto exclaimed, taking the jacket and trying it on. How'd I look? Not bad, Luffy said, Captain. Naruto smiled as he and everyone else enjoyed the cake that Sanji had baked for the occasion. The day had come for the Straw Hats to return to sea. As they loaded up the ship, Luffy shook hands with the Koza while Nami and Vivi were hugging each other goodbye. Most of the rest of the crew were loading up the ship with the necessary supplies for the trip, as were Komachi, Toa, Sasuke, and Hinata. Naruto, however, was standing apart from the crew with Sisi wearing his coat and hat with Valkyrie strapped to his back. Looks like it's time for me to go, Naruto said, looking up at the Thousand Sunny. I wish you didn't have to go, Sisi said, her eyes starting to tear up. Hey now, Naruto said, wiping her tears away, don't you start crying. I'll be back someday. Sisi took Naruto's hand in her own and cuddled up into it. You'd better come back someday, or else I'll have my father hunt you down, Sisi warned, smiling up at the boy. Naruto returned the smile before pulling the princess into a hug. Take care of yourself, Princess Sisi, Naruto said with a smile. And you, Captain Naruto, Sisi replied. Breaking the embrace, Naruto turned to the ship and jumped onto it, using the powers of wind to fly aboard. You all right, Naruto? Sasuke asked, his sword, named Triforce, resting on his back. Yeah, I'll be okay, Naruto said, turning back and locking eyes with Sisi. Her mother and father stood beside her just as Sasuke and Hinata stood beside Naruto. You'll see her again, Naruto, Hinata said, giving him a hug. How do you know? Naruto asked. What you and her have, bro, that's not something that can ever be broken, Sasuke said. Just trust your family on this one, all right? Naruto nodded and with one look back, turned away and prepared to set sail with the rest of the crew. Two guards stood at the gates of Konoha watching for anyone coming in. Slowly, out of the shadows of the trees, 5 figures emerged. 2 of them appeared to be Anbu while the other 3 were children judging by their height. Halt, one of the guards said as they approached. State your names and business in Konoha. Konoha, Anbu, Komachi and Toa returning from an extended mission, Komachi said. Navigator Hinata. Giga Drill, Hyuga, said the only girl of the 3 children. She wore a loose open jacket, tank top and baggy pants. She had water blue hair and pale almost white eyes. First mate Sasuke, Darkwing, Uchiha, said the taller of the 2 boys. His hair seemed to be almost silver in color and his skin a shimmering gold. He wore a blue shirt, black pants. A black bandana was wrapped around his right bicep, and a katana with a long hilt was strapped to his back. Captain Naruto, Nature Axe, Uzumaki, at your service, said the final boy as he removed his triangular hat to reveal bright white hair to go with his bronze-tanned skin. He wore a long coat with flame, wave, rocks, lightning, and tornado designs on it, and strapped to his back was something that looked to be a giant, double-bladed. The Hokage sat behind his desk, smoking his pipe and glaring at the pile of paperwork that only seemed to grow and never shrink. He sighed in boredom. Ever since Naruto had left with Sasuke and Hinata, Jiraiya had been returning to the village less and less, and Tsunade had stopped coming altogether. The biggest thing that had happened was the Uchiha massacre. There was a knock on the Hokage's door which was responded with an "Enter," in the form of a grunt. The doors opened and when the Hokage looked up, he almost did a double take. Anbu officers Komachi and Toa reporting for duty, Lord Hokage, Komachi said with a salute. And Captain Naruto Uzumaki, First Mate Sasuke Uchiha, and Navigator Hinata Hyuga returning to the village, old man, Naruto said with a smirk. Well, it looks like the 3 of you have changed a bit since we last saw each other, Sarutobi said with a smile. The three ninja in training smiled at the old fire. Shadow and then Naruto jumped at him and hugged him around the middle. "I missed you, old man," Naruto said. After getting over the initial shock, Sarutobi returned the hug to his surrogate grandson. "Well, now that all that sappy stuffy, what's been going on?" The Hokage sighed as he sat back in his chair. "It's not much, but what has happened isn't very good," Sarutobi sighed. "Tsunade has left the village for good, I fear, and Jiraiya has delved deeper into his spy network that I haven't seen him in months. Sasuke, I'm afraid that most of your family is dead. All that is left is you, your brother who committed the massacre, your mother, and your little sister." Sasuke paled at the information, but raised an eyebrow at the mention of a sister. "Lord Hokage, I don't have a sister," he said. "She was born shortly after you left for the seas." The Hokage explained with a smile on his face. "Her name is Nami." "You're kidding me," Naruto said with a chuckle. "Nami? That's nuts, that's the same name as the Straw Hat's navigator." "She gonna go nuts when she hears this," Sasuke muttered. "Nami your sister or Nami the navigator?" Hinata asked with a smile. "I'm afraid I have bad news for you too, Hinata," the Hokages said. Hinata's smile disappeared in an instant. "While you were gone, a ninja from Kumo infiltrated the village in an attempt to kidnap you little sister. Your father was able to save her in time, but without proper evidence, Kumo demanded they receive your father's head. Instead, your family's council sent your uncle, his twin brother, instead to preserve the Byakugan." Hinata was silent. "How's Neji doing?" she asked. "I'm afraid he's gone into a shell," the Hokage said with a sigh. Naruto looked back and forth at his brother and sister. "Maybe we should visit Sasuke's mom and meet his new little sister first," Naruto said. "After that we'll go the Hyugas and get all that stuff straightened out." Sasuke and Hinata looked at each other and nodded. "You'll find your mother and sister at this address, Sasuke," the Hokage said, handing Sasuke a slip of paper. Raising and bowing to the old man, the three of them left the room too. N.O.P. "Well, this is the place," Sasuke said, looking at the small apartment building. "Probably couldn't stay at the Uchiha family complex after what happened," Hinata said, taking Sasuke by the hand and giving it a squeeze. Taking a deep breath, he let go of her hand and knocked on the door. They all waited for a minute and the door opened to reveal a young girl with black hair and eyes. "Can I help you, mister?" she asked. "Hi, there, you must be Nami," Sasuke said, kneeling down in front of the girl. "My name's Sasuke, I'm your big brother." The girl's eyes widened. "Who's at the door, sweetie?" said another voice. A fair-skinned woman with black silk-like hair. When she saw who her daughter was talking to, she dropped what was in her hand. "Sasuke," she said, stunned. "Hi, Mom," Sasuke said with a smile. The two of them ran towards each other and embraced after so long. "I missed you so much, Mom," Sasuke said, holding his mother tight. "I missed you too, Sasuke," she said, "and I see you've met your little sister. You're never going to believe this, but she's got the same name as the navigator of the ship that we were on," Sasuke said. Naruto watched the scene before him with a smile before he placed a hand on Hinata's shoulder and turned to leave the family together before Sasuke called him back. "Nami, I'd like you to meet your other big brother and sister," Sasuke said. "This is Naruto and Hinata." Naruto turned back with Hinata by his side. Getting an idea, he knelt down in front of the girl and started to play Valkyrie. Around him the elements started to dance to the small tune he was playing. Nami smiled at the sight and started to laugh. Naruto smiled at the girl and stopped playing. Nami turned to Hinata. "Are you my big brother's girlfriend?" Hinata and Sasuke both turned red. Naruto's eyes met Sasuke's mom's and they smiled. "Well, you two were looking pretty cozy on some of those colder nights on the ship," Naruto said, stroking his chin. "Oh, were they now?" Mrs. Uchiha said, looking down at her son. "Well, Sasuke, is she your girlfriend?" They looked at Sasuke. "Come on guys, let's go check in with my family," Hinata said, "and if I can get there okay about it, Mrs. Uchiha, you and Nami can stay with us at the compound." "Thank you very much, Hinata," Mrs. Uchiha said, smiling. Sasuke kissed his mom and sister on the cheek before walking out the door with Hinata and a grinning Naruto. "Nice save there, Hinata," Naruto said, grinning at his shipmates. Said shipmates slowly turned to their white-haired captain with a sword partly drawn and a drill arm. You do know how much we want to kill you, right, Naruto? Sasuke asked. But you won't because you love me, Naruto said, his grin never leaving his face, and because you can't, he added. 5 elemental spheres forming and spinning in his hand. His first mate and navigator sighed and sheathed their weapons. Now come one. Let's check in on Hinata's family, he said. When they reached the Hyuga compound, the boys backed up a bit and let Hinata knock on the gates. The gates opened to reveal a Hyuga branch member. Lady Hinata, welcome back. I shall go and inform your father of your return, the branch member stated before leaving. Your clan really ain't that talkative, are they? Naruto asked as the 3 ninja pirates made their way through the compound. No, they are not, Hinata confirmed when they walked into the main room. What are those 2 doing in here? One of the Hyuga elders snapped, pointing at Naruto and Sasuke. Nice welcome back, isn't it? Naruto said, glancing at his first mate. Oh yeah, granted we both got ours in a way, Sasuke greeted with a shrug. These 2 are my shipmates. Anything you have to say around me you can say around them, Hinata said. Hinata, her father said coldly, there are traditions. To hell with traditions, Hinata snapped. When it all comes down to it, there are only 2 kinds of people out there, those who will stand by their friends when the shit hits the fan and those who will look out for themselves. I'm the first. Naruto and Sasuke are my family, and they're a hell of a lot more family than you living corpses. Everyone was in a dead silence as Hinata finished her rant until the silence was broken by one thing. Laughter that was coming from Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha. I tell you Sasuke, I love this girl, Naruto said, leaning his elbow against his first mate. I'll agree to that, Captain, Sasuke greeted. Thank you boys, Hinata said. Now, I know enough of the basics of ninjutsu and the gentle fist, along with my own spiral fighting style to take care of every one of you in here. How dare you? The oldest elder roared, jumping to his feet. I don't care if you are the hires to the Hyuga clan. I will not let some loud-mouthed little brat shoot her mouth off like that to her elders. If I didn't know any better, Hinata, I'd say this old fossil is calling you out, Naruto said as he and Sasuke began backing away. It does seem that way, doesn't it? Hinata said. So how about it, old timer? Think you can take me without having in your bones snapping? Hinata, I beg you to reconsider, her father begged. I wouldn't worry about her, old timer, Sasuke said. She may not look it, but our little Hinata is one hell of a fighter. As Hinata lowered herself into a combat position, the elder charged forward and unleashed a flurry of strikes against her. The only problem, for him anyway, was that not a single one of his attacks even came close to so much as grazing Hinata. With a smirk, Hinata struck him in the chest, causing him to freeze in his tracks. She quickly followed up with another chakra-charged palm strike to his chin, then his knee, and finally a powerful kick to his chest that sent him flying into the wall. Everyone except Naruto and Sasuke stared at Hinata in shock as her right arm changed into a giant drill. Spiral breaker, shouted Hinata as she rocketed at the elder drill first. She slammed into the wall, effectively destroying it just millimeters from his body. I win, old man, and that means there's going to be some changes around here. She changed her arm back to normal and pulled it out of the wall. The defeated elder was about to charge and attack Hinata but found an axe and sword crossed over his neck. It's one thing to attack an opponent from behind after they've defeated you, Sasuke said. But if you go after one of our shipmates, then you're begging to be killed, Naruto finished. The Shadow Tail pirates stand by one another through anything and everything, Hinata said, addressing the entire council of elders. Which means that as far as you dinosaurs are concerned, they're Hyuga, and so are Sasuke's mother and sister. Which means they'll be living here as well. Without another word, Hinata left the room with Sasuke and Naruto at her heels. Nice speech, Hinata, Sasuke said. Thanks, Sasuke, Hinata said, blushing slightly. Well, I don't know about you two, Naruto said, slamming his fist into his open hand. But things around here are about to get a lot more interesting. The end. Now we will see you in the next video.